Do you think we should introduce ourselves first? Because obviously,
introduce yourselves.
Yes. Okay. So hi, I'm Kava. This is Tenny and Danimal. So I run a YouTube channel. On it, I post video essays and other miscellaneous things.
They're amazing videos. She's totally underselling it. Her videos are incredible. You guys should subscribe to her channel.
They're okay.
They're
all right.
They're
they're very amateur, but I try my best.
Amateur hour is our middle name.
Way underselling it. They're great videos. Yeah.
Kava's video.
I'm very when I see Kava post a video, I'm very excited. They contend with Sitch's videos. Actually, they're very well thought out.
Wow,
she makes scripts.
High praise.
You watch her videos, don't you? She puts arguments forward. It's always well thought out, well researched. Yeah, amazing videos. You guys are totally underselling it here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you don't want to watch us talk about porn. What's the fuck?
Yeah, I don't. So go ahead. You give your spiel. Do you want to lay out some argument or something? Is that what you want to do?
Well, I watched the JXC stream last week.
Right.
And, I thought it was interesting. Obviously, I saw it as a very good faith attempt from both sides to try to understand the situation. I found a lot of it sort of unresolved by the end, though. A lot of it was very unsatisfying, partially because we didn't really get down. And what I always want to do, and if you know my videos, I always want to corner those definitions. And I really want to understand what both sides say or what they mean when they say a word. And in the meanwhile, I think this is a big one where two people can say the word gender and they mean entirely different things. And that's where a lot of the conversation gets lost.
Well, I think with Jay, I like Jay, and I hope we'll have Jay on again, which I assume we will. Jay wanted to come on in the future, but I think that she, I think Jay accepts both.
I believe he goes by both.
Didn't I felt like that he hadn't really thought through very in-depth arguments for a lot of these gender issues, and it's more just like a kind of surface level. I'm experiencing this. I deserve rights, trans people deserve rights, period. There wasn't really in-depth arguments that Jay was bringing forward.
Yeah, a lot of it did come across as intuited. This is stuff.
Yes, that's a much kinder way of saying what I just said. Yes, it's a very intuitive argument.
I noticed that a lot of these sort of gender variant people, shall we say, to put it in the most polite.
Gender variant people.
It's like the Omicron variant.
Yes.
Yeah, sort of gender variant persons.
That brings to me the image of like in Fallout, there's Deathclaw variants roaming the land. There's gender variants roaming the land.
Hey there, smooth skin. Never seen a ghoul before.
Exactly.
But I think that a lot of these sort of people who identify as trans or gender queer, gender non-conforming, non-binary, and whatnot, I don't think that their identities are very coherent or well thought out, and I think that presents a problem when interacting with other people. And I think that in a sense their identities are based purely on perception or phenomena, basically, that they see and think about, and it's not something that is either well thought out or manifesting in the real world, in a sense. And so I don't think that this lack of actually thinking about who or what you are presents an issue, because other people can look at you and think many different things about who and what you are. And if you, of course, don't sort of know yourself, that's quite the problem for when you interact with other people in the world. It's sort of like at the ancient oracle at Delphi, there was the inscription, "Know thyself." And I think in many ways people are sort of denying that choice, and instead just going with whatever they perceive or whatever they feel without really thinking too deeply into it.
Well, it's funny we were just talking about identity creation because there's
Mhm.
two different ways to look at identity. There's the sincerity paradigm, which is, you look at yourself as a member of a community and how you fit in with that community, a father, a mother, a sister, a brother. There is the authenticity paradigm, which is more looking at, your likes and dislikes and trying to create an identity that is the authentic you, which is a completely different paradigm. And then there's this pro-felicity paradigm that the Carefree Wandering guy is putting forward, where we all go on to social media and we curate a profile that is our identity, and we observe it from this thing called second order observation, where we look at how that identity is perceived by something called the general peer, the general viewer, which is a completely different form of identity creation. So, identity is, there's a lot to identity, and gender is just one aspect of it. Kavah, what you started this by saying that there are two different definitions of gender that you feel like are getting conflated.
Before we change topic.
Well, can we just get I just want to get she brought it up first. Like, what are the two
but I just want to respond
to
the know thyself thing that you brought up is kind of interesting, because it used to be, or the concept was, if you know who you are internally, if you have a strong internal sense of who you are, this is how you draw upon confidence and strength moving in the world. And it seems like right now, with a lot of the gender activists and with a lot of the woke activists, like that idea has been abandoned for, I can only know myself by how everyone else perceives me, or even worse than that, how I believe everyone else perceives me. So it's like the opposite of know thyself. It's like, I only know thyself through others. Other people have to constantly confirm to me that I am, whatever the gender I want to be, or that I'm whatever the person I want to be as. Because if they don't, then I'll become anxious, I'll become triggered, I'll become emotionally unstable.
Well, that's the problem with pronouns.
Those are
Right.
the split paradigm between authenticity and pro-felicity right there. You just
Right.
completely laid it out.
And I really like that pro-felicity model. I'm going to talk briefly about it in my video.
Oh, really?
Because I think
Did you read his book?
I haven't read his book,
Oh,
but
okay.
I watched the pro-felicity video, and that whole idea of it as a technology, I think, really aligns well with my overall analysis. So you asked me, what are the different definitions of gender? Well,
Yes.
in fact, I think there might be 3 or 4 definitions that often get conflated, or at least there are dimensions to gender that get sort of tossed around and don't get clearly delineated often in these conversations. And they're dealt with differently by different camps, because you actually have camps within camps. And there's a lot going on there. But for one aspect of gender that is often brought up in trans conversations, you've got what I call sex heuristics. So these are things like clothing, hairstyle, just physical things that you adopt to present as, essentially you're just communicating your sex via shortcuts, so that you can look at a person and be like, hey, that person's male because they're wearing a suit and a tie and they have short hair. These are ways.
This was real big when we watched the non-binary people. This is what they were talking about.
Oh yeah, because non-binary, inevitably, one of the first things they'll say is, I wasn't comfortable wearing dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of think that's what gender is just the donning of these clothes. The problem, of course, is these sex heuristics are purely cultural. Like, you go to culture to culture to culture throughout even time periods. 50 years ago, what was women's clothing in the United States? It was actually slightly different than it is now, even in that short of a time.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about those things, those are cultural phenomena. They aren't really stable things to base your identity on, but they get lumped in with everything else. So you got those there. Then I think another aspect that gets lumped in with the term gender is behavioral trends. So these are sort of like your big 5 personality traits, right? This is the Jordan Peterson wheelhouse. How do the groups of male and female act differently across the spectrum? So they say, oh, men are more aggressive, women are more, submissive, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll just kind of link these things. These elements, of course, have a lot of variety within those groups. You can have very aggressive women, you can have very shy men. But across groups, you can kind of see those trends.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of hard to have as a term of gender as well, right? You can't really pin for sure your individual gender based on those things because they are variant across groups. But there's another level. Ooh, what was that other level? Well, there is another definition that I think, and this is where the trans camp really has a problem, an internal fight right now, is between what's called the trans medicalist, the true scum, and what are called like sometimes transtrenders or transgender identity folks, who, you know, true scum who think gender is some kind of biological thing, right? They think it's some ingrained biological mechanism somewhere that is unavoidable. It's something that you can get diagnosed as. So that's how they kind of perceive their gender dysphoria. They say, I am a man in a woman's body, or vice versa. So they really see it as biological. There's some kind of biological thing there.
And they're probably right. More so.
And the problem is like those definitions, when I hear people talk about trans, they just kind of jump back and forth between those things, but each of those things are very different. Obviously cultural heuristics are totally culturally created. They're just made up. And while behavioral stuff is measurable, but it's not measurable by person, it's measurable via the group trend.
Sure. Well, I mean, when we're talking, and I'm, you know, when you talk to most, you know, gender activists and online people, they're talking about these issues. I mean, they're not coming at it from a first principle perspective. They don't have some first principles about gender, and thus, you know, most of them, they didn't thus derive their feelings about transgender individuals. It's all just, oh, I'm supporting, you know, this transgender issue because I believe, you know, this is what my team wants me to do. And then they look for the argument afterwards. And that's why they're jumping around all over the place, not being consistent.
Yeah.
Make sure Danimal and Tennyson can get it if they want.
Well, you're covering it pretty well. See, my concern about it comes more from the, are we bettering people's lives by having this type of conversation? Like, I don't know. I was reading about when kind of puberty blockers started becoming the care model or the standard of care, and that was back in, let me look at my notes, 2009, and that was based on the Dutch protocols. And I was reading some articles about scientists that were involved in creating the Dutch protocols around kind of treating gender dysphoria or diagnosed gender dysphoria or kids who experience gender incongruence. And but one of them is a harsh critic of the way that kind of America and the rest of the Western world kind of took the Dutch protocols and molded them. I mean, in 2009 is when the Endocrine Society approved GnRHAs, which I believe is the term for puberty blockers, to be prescribed for kids who were experiencing gender identity disorder. And they really heavily quoted the Dutch protocols, but the way that it's been applied has been very inconsistent with what they suggested. They suggested it needs to be a case-by-case basis. It's not right in all circumstances. There's not a blanket care that you can give in these circumstances. And
in fact, and I don't know if you know whether this is true, have the Dutch protocols changed since that time? I feel like
what are the Dutch protocols?
So the Dutch protocols are the studies around adolescent presenting gender dysphoria. And that was when they studied, I forget how many kids. Do you remember how many kids, Kyle?
I don't. It wasn't.
We're all against
like
puberty blockers, right? I mean, I'm against puberty blockers. Sitch, are you in favor of puberty blockers?
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah. I think some people kind of have accepted it because they think hormone blockers are reversible, or at least
totally.
at the end.
Well, I'm all in favor of them if they're reversible, but they're not. So, okay.
Yeah, right. They're not. They promote kind of bone growth that leads to osteoporosis. And the most interesting thing, I think, is that some insane amount of percentage of children who go on puberty blockers go on to hormones.
Yeah, and
way more than you would anticipate in a regular group.
That's what Stensma was saying. He was one of the researchers in the Dutch protocols, and he was saying that even social transitioning before puberty blockers, before the kid even becomes a puberty and you kind of socially transition them into another gender, that also typically precipitates continuing gender incongruence.
What it seems to do, it seems to solidify the path.
Right.
So
Which this is the problem with having this be an identity as opposed to a medical condition, because the idea is that you want to relieve the gender incongruence. That's the goal here. We'll relieve the gender incongruence. And yet for some reason, especially in America, that's been sort of twisted into affirming your identity when that's not the only way. Maybe the way is to let someone go through puberty.
Yeah, and this is where I think it gets really incoherent with the transgender identity stuff, which I see as a very separate camp from trans medicalists who say, I have gender dysphoria, I'm in the wrong body, I need this for medical care. Transgender identity has basically thrown everything out the window. They say gender isn't really a thing. It's just something that they sort of imagine it as a thing that changes over the course of their life, but is also ethically wrong to interfere with. Because you have a lot of gender fluid, a lot of non-binary. They'll even say, and I've listened to a lot of these talks, they'll say, oh, your gender identity changes throughout your life. That's normal. And they'll just say that without ever acknowledging, like, throughout that process, you're probably getting surgery, you're probably getting hormones, you're probably getting all these medical interventions for something that's fluid in their mind. And they don't see this really as a problem.
So I mentioned on Twitter that I find there being some value in separating sex and gender, and conceptualizing gender as just the expression of a complete social construct. And you seem to be on board with that, Kava. I don't. Sitch doesn't seem on board with that. So maybe we can talk about that.
I think what's useful. I don't like the term gender because, like I said, so much of it gets conflated.
Yeah,
but
he said gender incongruence, which I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I think if we narrowed down gender to things that are sort of visibly sort of secondary trends, things that we can observe at a group level that are not definitional, right? We wouldn't define a person as a man or a woman based on these traits, but we can observe men and women biologically and say, okay, on these different metrics, we see how they differ broadly. But we also see a lot of overlap. And that's actually where I want to turn to next with the brain studies, because I know you've brought them up. I see people in the chat bringing up brain stuff. And Danimal, for sure, you and I have read a bit on this just recently. There's a really interesting video by a transgender identity person, and she's non-binary. I'm going to misgender because it's just it is what it is.
Yeah, I forget the pronouns.
I forget pronouns. It's fine. But this person made this video and actually went through and I think very concisely and very accurately dismantled the whole pink blue brain thing.
What is the pink blue brain thing?
The idea that there are male brains and female brains.
Okay.
And you think that they did a good job doing this?
Yes.
Or that they're correct in doing this?
I think they were correct in that. I think the disconnect was figuring out what that meant for this person. Because now, what's the basis of saying you have gender dysphoria at that point? I don't know.
Well, yeah, because that's part of the infighting you were talking about between the quote unquote true scum and then the other people who.
So transgender identity, they don't really care about gender dysphoria. They don't think you need it. In fact, they kind of think it'll go away as you culturally dismantle those concepts.
Right, which is insane and stupid and wrong.
Right. Now we have our own pet theory about what causes gender dysphoria. We could dig into that.
The pink blue brain thing, what was their argument? Because everything I've seen scientifically says the opposite.
Yeah,
there's a couple major problems with the brain studies. So the first problem is very small sample sizes. The second problem is every brain scan study that's been done on trans people has been done post-transition. So we're talking about males who have been on cross-sex hormones or females who have been on cross-sex hormones.
But the stroke studies are the ones that we're probably thinking of, and those aren't small sample sizes.
Stroke studies?
Yeah, there's been stroke studies that show there's different, like if a male has a stroke on the right hemisphere of the brain, there's a far different outcome than if a woman has a stroke on the right side of the brain, which
Yes.
would lead you to
And
believe that
that's-
men and women's brains are different.
I'm not saying that men and women's brains per se have no differences.
Okay,
as
so
a
what are you
group,
saying?
Right? What I am saying is if you actually look at a lot of the brain scans and brain difference studies and you sort of
Mhm.
overlap them in terms of trends, you get something like an 80 to 90% overlap in terms of things that are quote unquote male, quote unquote female. Very few people have what we would call a sort of 100% feminine brain, and very few have male
But
brains.
that's
Most
kinda
people are mosaics somewhere in between. You
Uh-huh.
can reasonably guess a person's sex by their brain a little better than chance. Just
So-
pure
I
guessing.
disagree with that, but
So, well, first of all, if the brain scan studies that show that say, oh, these were done after people were on hormones, which I could have swore I've read some that were pre, but I'm not sure. That would only relate to gender dysphoria or transgender people. That would actually prove that there's a gender difference if taking, cross-sex hormones changes your brain to look more like the opposite sex. And
Right.
remember-
but we're talking about degrees too, right?
well, of course, but that's true. That's true of everything, though. I mean, it's like, oh, humans share, whatever 98 point whatever DNA with chimpanzees or something. Okay. But obviously the little bit can make a big difference. And I remember there was the woman whose name escapes me she had a famous paper come out where she's like, oh, there's no gendered brains. And she did thousands and thousands of brain scans. She showed that most people's brains could not be separated via gender. And after she released that study, like 2 or 3 people just created a machine learning algorithm that with like 95% accuracy took her same brain scans and could completely sort them by male or female. So there is, I mean, this
there's
can be
something
done.
there.
It seems like the argument's kind of falling into this weird middle ground, like this kind of fallacious way of thinking.
It's also, I don't think, very clear that every male who has a, let's say, more feminine brain is going to experience gender dysphoria.
Well, that's
So
definitely
that part
true.
is also,
Right.
so
Right.
I think even if we are going to say like, okay, if we look trends based, if you kind of fall more in the trend of the male-ish features, it's not a guarantee that you're going to have gender dysphoria. There's some
Sure.
other mechanism going on.
Well, we
So
have to
that's probably
separate.
true.
We have to separate whether men and women have different brains on average or different things in their brain on average, and then whether that relates to gender dysphoria or not, because those are 2 separate issues.
Yes.
And from my understanding, the men and women having different brains is pretty solid. Now, there's probably still a big question as to how that relates to gender dysphoria or not. Would be the more unknown question.
There is some interesting, I know there's another theory about, say, trans being caused by exposure to testosterone in the womb and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. What I think is interesting is we have a lot of cases of people with sex development disorders who have those conditions, and even people who are quote unquote biologically male, but phenotypically female, and they don't seem to have any gender confusion. In fact, they don't know they have the condition until either puberty or until some tests have been done. So it's obviously like not a clear cut case of if you're trans, it's because you have the wrong body. And I also think it's interesting, it's never the case we say they have the wrong brain.
Mm-hmm.
That strikes me as
Well, I mean,
because
uh-huh.
we say that with a lot of mental illness, like the illness is in the brain, we need to fix the brain.
Right.
In this
right.
case, we seem to flip it on its head, and it's a little.
Well, it's the
conspicuous.
association. This is why it's so dangerous, I'd argue, to associate it with your identity, because then no longer is it about fixing your brain. It's about, oh, I have to affirm my identity. And this is part of the problem, is that as soon as it becomes warped in with your identity, a lot of the science on what causes gender dysphoria and what is transgender is pushed aside or is discouraged because there is the fear that you could just find out, there is something wrong with your brain and maybe this could be cured, or maybe we do have a test that shows whether people really are trans or not. And once they get that, all this gender identity activism stuff is going to suddenly go against the science and they're going to be the ones very publicly advocating for anti-scientific positions. And I think they're aware of that, or the gender activists are aware of that on some deep level.
Right, which I think is why they kind of muddled the whole question of gender and what it means. I don't know how familiar you are with like xenogenders and other stuff.
Damn aliens.
I'm not familiar at all. I mean,
so if you look it up,
we did an episode on this actually a while ago. I want to say a couple months maybe, where we were talking about what they call
gender is just the expression of biological sex. I mean, how are we never really define gender in a way that I'm comfortable with. Like I think there's utility to just separating gender in whatever expression there is, and then pushing gender into the realm of fashion. I feel like that's the strategic best thing to do.
Tennyson can explain the whole xenogender concept then.
Right. So a while back we did an episode about neopronouns, and we watched and sort of disassembled several videos on the subject before we went over to the pronouns wiki. Now, this is a lovely little music box of horror. For those of you who are blissfully unaware, the pronouns wiki is a wiki where people added all manner of genders and flags and pronouns and all sorts of things. And
this is where you get like deer gender or
deer gender, animal gender.
Xenogender are non-human genders.
Yes.
Well,
yeah,
these are like they're not associated with masculine or feminine.
But all this is
genders
about
that are
they're basically fashion and just whole cloth. Obviously, they have nothing to do with reproduction.
They're aesthetics.
No.
Yes,
Yeah.
They are basically just aesthetics, and I think that's.
But isn't gender itself just an aesthetic? That's my question.
It is.
No.
Here's what I would.
Okay,
call
see, Sitch,
gender.
this is why I'm like, why? Why is that not the case?
I'm on the site. I identify as astral gender. Okay.
Well, wait, isn't a tomboy just a girl with a masculine aesthetic?
Yes.
So how is gender not just an aesthetic?
Here's the problem with you categorizing gender.
I wouldn't say that a tomboy is masculine. I would say tomboy is boyish. And I wouldn't say that.
I think that's kind of the same thing.
They're
so
kind of the
let's
same
go
thing,
butch.
But
now will you say it's a masculine aesthetic?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
more so.
There you go. We're making some progress here.
Adam, the problem with
what is a lady boy?
The problem with the way you're sort of framing gender
it's a guy with a female aesthetic.
Hold on, let's
Sitch
no, Adam, you don't know what a lady boy is.
Yeah, no, that's not what a lady boy is.
Oh no.
Well, do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep interrupting me, Adam.
No, go ahead, Sitch.
Okay. The problem with the way you're framing gender is that there's two problems that go together, and that you're basically ceding the argument to the gender activists about gender is just this, it's just fashion, it's just a sex, it's just this thing, you can try it on like you do a hat every day. And the reason that is I don't accept that is because that's not how normal people define gender. The average person, I believe, defines gender the same way the American Psychological Association does, which is that sex is your sexual reproduction organs, and that's really it. And that everything else associated with being masculine or feminine, regardless of whether it's biological or social, is part of what makes your gender. And that definition, I think, is too ingrained in society to change.
Wait, so are you saying sex and gender is interchangeable?
No, he's not.
No.
Okay, so define gender for me. I got to get it before. Now, because I was interrupting, it's not me. So,
sex is your sexual organ. Okay, your dick or your vagina.
Mm-hmm.
Gender is everything else that relates to masculine or femininity.
So your brain is your gender.
Yes, that's how I think the average person defines gender.
I completely disagree, but. Go ahead.
You don't think that if you were to go on the street and ask people like, what's the difference between sex and gender, that's what you would get, basically?
I think most people would probably put a little more than genitals in there, but you're on the right track. Exactly. there's biological sex, and most
Upper
people have a
body
pretty
strength, fucking all.
intuitive. I think they
Well,
have
okay,
intuitive.
we'll include
senses.
secondary sexual
Yeah.
characteristics
Yeah, for sure.
and outward physical appearances in the sex category. But if you were to ask people like okay, if men are on average more aggressive than women, or if men on average, like math more than women on average or something, okay, or women on average like to be more social than men, most people would probably categorize these factors of masculine and feminine behavior as gender, even though I would argue that they're biological or mostly biological.
Yeah, I
They
feel
they
the
trend
split is more
along
practical.
biological lines.
Yes, thank you.
Right. It's a trend, and that's
Right.
part of the important part, because the everyday person, if you identify a person and say, okay, this person is biologically female, but they like sports and they like these things and these things, are they still a woman? Most people are going to say, yeah, they just have masculine
Right. But so, okay,
interests.
like,
So this is like very intuitive for everyday
Yes.
people. This is where it gets really confusing with the trans stuff, because I've tried to I've pinned people down and said, can you tell me the difference between a very, very butch, hyper-masculine female who says, I'm a lesbian, I'm a tom, I'm butch, I'm all this, but I'm still a woman, and like an exact duplicate who has all the same interests, all the same traits, everything else, but says, I'm actually a man. And as far as I can tell, the only difference between these two individuals is one has declared something.
Yes,
Well, and the
totally.
abs.
Self-identification.
Oh, the abs as well.
and
yes.
the abs, yes.
Yep.
And I think that's really what it boils down to. It's
even if-
self-declaration, it's pronouns. That's really where they think gender is located ultimately.
Sitch, the problem I have with your definition is it's just impractical. Even if it is this psychological academy or whatever's definition, it's not a practical
American
definition.
Psychiatric Association.
I think
It's
Sitch's
not a
is probably
practical
actually
definition.
Pretty intuitive.
It's
to the
it is.
everyday person.
Thank you, Kava. That is what.
So where's
intuitively
where's
people
the
latch
split?
onto. Okay, let me give you the perfect example. If you see a bunch of 5-year-old kids, you see a bunch of boys that are segregated and they're engaged in rough and tumble play, and you
Mhm.
see a bunch of 5-year-old girls and they're engaged in playing house or dolls or something. We'll make it the most stereotypical shit possible.
Mhm.
If you were to take 100 adults and ask them, are you witnessing sex differences or gender differences? I can almost guarantee you that the majority of them would say you're witnessing gender differences. And that is why I can't abide by your definition.
What are we witnessing though?
That depends on how I believe we're witnessing a mostly biological
Sex
behavioral
differences.
difference.
Exactly. We both
But
agree.
no one is going to use that term.
I am saying that the term is impractical and that society is shifting to using the term everything that's social is gender and everything that's
No, because
biological is sex.
I
And
think
that
gender,
seems like a
here's
good
the-
split.
Here's the trick, right? Gender is rooted in sex. The two
Yes.
are
Of
connected.
course it is.
They
but
they come from one, because sex creates for us the categories of male and female, and we intuit the existence of masculine and feminine by observing trends across those two biological categories. Those two things are innate. We understand that. However, I think since time immemorial, cultures have recognized that there are people who are biologically one thing but don't fall in those trends gender-wise.
you're saying that
And-
gender comes from sex, but there's a number of people out there that want to reverse it on you. They want to say that sex comes from gender. That's
Correct.
the whole
Those people-
point
yeah,
of
those people are
self-declaration.
Exactly. They want
Yeah.
to say sex is not a real category because I can intuit my own self-categorization.
Here's the issue, Adam, is
Mhm.
that so the American Psychological Association has your definition where it says any biological difference, okay, whether it's behavioral or not, we're going to label as a sex difference. And anything that's entirely from society, we're going to label as a gender difference.
So they have my definition.
Yeah, but they do. But you know what
Mhm.
happens? Every single fucking dumb gender activist and leftist doesn't understand that definition, and they constantly quote that as meaning that there are no biological differences between men and women other than their genitalia and secondary sex characteristics.
Well, that's just because they don't know. They're unstudied.
But that's why I'm saying that's the problem with the definition. If we lived in a different world where this kind of trans conversation wasn't happening, I would say you're completely right, Adam. Your definition is functionally better. I agree. It's completely functionally better, and I wish
I
everyone
love
could
it. We're
adopt it
warming
because it
up.
make the
Mhm.
language
Mhm.
more clear. But we don't live in that world, unfortunately.
And
Well,
I think
I'm
what's
adopting
really
it.
important for people to kind
I
of
am
wrap their head
adopting
around.
it, and I tell people fuck off. I'm using my language.
But-
you use your language.
but-
I'll use my language.
But it's not. We're not talking in a vacuum.
You
We're
know what-
talking in this American English society.
But
where
you
we have
know
to
the
use
utility.
words that convey meanings that everyone else understands and uses.
You know, the utility of mine though is that I can say, you do whatever you want with the gender, but sex is immutable.
Yeah,
I
but
can say that.
listen.
With gender,
think
you
you
can't
guys
say
actually-
that.
Listen, Adam.
Hold on.
I'm.
I think you
hoping-
both agree more than you're.
No, we
quibbling is
do.
showing.
I
Of
understand.
course
that
we
shit.
always
Believe me,
agree.
I understand. Imagine
Because you're
that
both
I'm
right all the time.
Imagine that I'm caressing your face, Adam.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm holding your face.
Ooh,
lovingly,
ouch.
stroking your cheek.
Get
Okay.
away.
Okay, listen.
You
to me.
didn't say no homo.
Listen to me, buddy.
I've never
100%
stopped
homo.
imagining that such.
Yeah, this is the 5 homos and pussy stream now. Okay, listen. Guys, okay, I understand what you're saying, and you're completely right. You're completely right. The way that you're phrasing it would be better. Would be
Is
clear,
better.
is better, and is clear on a completely abstract level. But we have to contend with the reality that there's a bunch of gender activists going around who have already poisoned the well of what the term gender means.
Okay.
And so if you try to adopt your correct version, it will be low resolution, dumbed down to be harmful the way the gender activists are currently using the term.
I would love you to explain the causal link in that argument.
Because what they do is the average person, since they've poisoned the well that gender means,
Any second now, he's
Just-
going to actually get to it, but go ahead.
since they've poisoned the well and they're saying that gender means just societal things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Since the average person is working off of the old definition of gender, where they think
Mhm.
gender means all things that are masculine or feminine that are not related to physical, biological dick and balls or secondary characteristics, they think that means, oh, so you're saying that all these things about masculine and femininity are just social. That's where
Mhm.
the confusion is coming from. They don't
Mhm.
understand the distinction exactly because they're trying to combine the new definition with the old definition, which is what I argue the gender activists want.
So, but you're saying that it makes it easier for them to make the argument that men like sports because they're trained by society
Yes.
to like sports.
It
But
breeds
that's
into
it's
Right.
so easy to get past that though, just to teach them incorrect. They're incorrect.
Well,
I don't
it's
think
it's
that's
easy to
easy.
get past if you don't believe in biological sex.
right, exactly. But
Which-
that's sort of, but now that's the new
Uh,
argument they're making now, that there is no
Yeah.
biological sex.
Well, men like
And again,
sports
I
for
think- and I think a
biological
lot of
reasons
this-
anyway.
What the trouble of it is, as humans, we're pretty bad at thinking between things of individuals
Mm-hmm.
and individuals within a variation scale. Because if you, most traits, we're talking masculine, feminine, male, female, certain the biological traits are pretty separate bell curves. They're not even bell curves, right? They're just two separate categories, just almost perfectly. There's something like a 1% or 2% people kind of fall in sort of these little wiggle room spaces. But most people definitively male, female. The thing about masculine and feminine, because they're mixed with social constructs and they're mixed with biological trends and they're kind of all mishmashed together, people will put them on a spectrum. And the whole like gender spectrum thing drives me nuts because there's no scientific basis for putting one thing at the other. It's a lot of it's just kind of made up as they go, especially once they try to turn it into a sex spectrum, then it's just completely hogwash.
Sex spectrum, no. Gender spectrum, okay.
Gender spectrum, kind of. The
Well, I mean,
problem is,
masculine
again,
and
they mix,
feminine
they
is the
mix,
spectrum.
again, the problem isn't that there aren't behaviors that we can say are masculine or feminine. The problem is they mix
Yes,
in
there
other
are.
things in there. They
Sewing,
mix in things like liking wearing dresses,
Doing
which is, like,
dishes.
cultural,
making
Yeah.
I like
sandwiches.
sewing and doing dishes.
making sandwiches,
well,
yeah,
obviously,
all that.
see,
wanting to have babies, all that.
Okay.
You're a
wanna-
man
trying to
with
have
a-
babies for years. It ain't working.
We'll
I
figure out how
have
to
a guide.
MPEG
I'll
Adam
send it to you
eventually.
later.
You want to prevent false positives for gender dysphoria, right, Adam? That's like part of
Yes.
the goal
Oh,
here.
see, Sitch has been, he's like back here. He's like,
Yes.
I'm going to get him. Let me think. How do I get it?
So that we can, if you want to
He's
switch
trying
gears
to
a
get
bit,
an
think
argument.
about like gender dysphoria as a diagnosis.
Well, no, I'm just saying that if your
I'd like to
goal,
talk about that.
yeah, we can talk about that. But if the goal is to prevent false positives, I would argue
Mm-hmm.
that trying to teach, in massive finger quotes, people this different definition of gender and sex, that is part of the problem. Is it's leading people down the path of all these false positives. Because as Kavlaw said, you could have a guy saying, "Oh, I want to dress like a girl. That means I have gender dysphoria." Or I want to dress like a boy. That means I really have a boy's brain. Like that's where all this confusion is coming from. Is the fact that people are not properly separating
Yeah,
a lot
wouldn't
of
that
these
go
things
away
up.
though if you took the biological component out of gender? I feel like it would. I feel like you're
No.
kind of making my
Well,
argument.
no,
here.
because it's not called sex dysphoria. It's not called transsexual anymore. It's called transgender.
Mhm.
So you'd have to. So what you're suggesting,
transgender
maybe.
people are people that want to change their biological sex. I don't care what the terminology is.
Well, but okay, but so in order for us to adapt the sex gender definition you're talking about, we would have to change the terms to not gender dysphoria, but to sex dysphoria and the
Let's just-
transsexualism.
Let's
I'm
just
actually okay
terms
with doing
terms
that, but
aside.
it's-
Let's just
Well,
all set the
fine.
terms aside and
Okay.
try to describe exactly what is happening here, okay? You have individuals who are drawn to a certain aesthetic, a masculine aesthetic or a female, a feminine aesthetic, right?
Mhm.
A man or a woman aesthetic. Then there's biological sex, male and female. I feel like we all agree that sex is a binary, that you can't escape the biological realities of biological sex, and that you can't change from a man to a woman. You can modify your aesthetics, sure, as much as humanly possible, as much as
Yes.
possible with surgery or whatever, but you're not going to change the biological reality of the situation.
Right,
and I
but-
just
okay.
feel like separating the biological reality and saying, look, Johnny, you can't become a woman. Okay, that's not possible, is better. And telling them, but if you want to become a woman, if you want to express the gender of womanness, you can do that.
Here's the distinction, and I would be fine accepting the sex gender definition if the gender community and the psychological psychiatric community would bite the bullet on this.
They're
This-
not
this
going
came
to
up
agree,
in our-
though.
This came up in our talk with Jay, which is that I am a true scum. Okay, I don't think people should be allowed to transition because they want to have a female or male or other aesthetic. I do not think that that is a justifiable reason for transitioning. I think the only justifiable reason for transitioning is if you have a medical condition known as gender dysphoria that goes much deeper than simply liking the aesthetic of the opposite sex.
Who's the conservative here and who's the liberal? Come on, tell me. Tell me who is it?
Both filthy liberals.
Who is it?
We're both
See,
we're both
Adam is the one that says, "Listen, you don't have to have gender dysphoria. You could just want to do it." And I'm
No,
like,
that's great. That's me. That's totally crazy.
who's the conservative here? Who's the conservative? I'm just
have the more
asking.
conservative. Well, first of all, a lot of conservatives would say, well, they're against transitioning regardless, completely. So neither of us. But
Mhm.
I'm taking the more conservative approach in this. Yes.
Yes, definitely the more conservative position. But this is where I think obviously I'm against puberty blockers. I'm against, fucking with kids' minds. This is for consenting adults. Like if a consenting adult wants to have a sex change operation, go for it. Well, who am I to stop them? So,
Yeah,
but
but what if it's an adult going through like a mental health episode, or they're having they're very vulnerable in that way?
This is where I think
check
talking
that
about
out.
gender dysphoria might be very helpful, especially now that the U.S. has pretty much converted to a informed consent model when it comes to
it's
transition.
terrible. Yes.
So, and you hear a lot about this with the detrans community, and there's a lot of them. There's people who have gone through the process as adults who came out the other end going, what did I do? because I think the symptoms, in fact, I wonder, this is not something I approve of, but it's something I wonder. I wonder if what we call gender dysphoria is not one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's a symptom that can be underlying of a number of conditions. I've heard from detrans people who talk about suicidal ideation and experiencing gender dysphoria. I hear about them undergoing abuse as a child and getting gender dysphoria as a result. There are people with eating disorders. There are people with borderline personality disorder who experience gender dysphoria as a result. And they essentially figure out like that's where it came from. Once I treated my borderline, my gender dysphoria got resolved or lessened. OCD is another one. There are a lot of conditions that can cause you distress about your body. It can cause you to fixate on your body. It can also cause you to have a crisis of identity. And it's really easy. Let's say you're a typical female, but you never fit in with other girls because you had some traits that were considered more masculine, and they might be totally
gamer.
Like you're totally socially mapped, so it's not even things that are necessarily biological, but you like to play video games or you like to read certain kinds of books, and you're just not a girly girl.
Right.
And then you have a huge crisis of identity. You don't know who you are. And you will go online and their community is saying, oh, if you feel this, this, and this, that means you're trans.
Yeah.
Like, of course you're going to get sucked into that. Like it's the magic key to solve all your problems.
Right.
And in reality, you're a 13-year-old girl. You have undiagnosed OCD. You have undiagnosed borderline personality.
Yes. Well,
and there's just no consequence for just going forward with it.
Right. Well, and the problem and the reason, and I think you're completely right.
Autism again. Yes, autism also.
I think you're completely right. And the problem and the reason this arises is because if you look at the medical definition of gender dysphoria, it's just a symptom of a reported feeling. It's just saying, oh, I feel like my gender is not congruent with my sex and it's making me sad or very, causing extreme emotional distress. Mm-hmm. And that's very vague. And that can be caused by a million billion different things. Totally. And that's part of the problem is that we don't exactly know. Now, I would theorize that there is an actual quote unquote true gender dysphoria, which is caused by some weird issue in the brain. But that a lot of people, and where a lot of false positives come from, is the fact that gets confused for all these other issues you're talking about, like OCD, anxiety, and general social concerns, and all these other things. And the only way that's ever going to be solved is with more brain scans, more studies to actually create a biological test to make these determinations.
Yeah, what if they find out, though, that the whole idea of gender dysphoria is just an excuse to make, to provide a reasoning for moving forward with some of these more extreme positions, when really it's no deeper than somebody is just uncomfortable with their aesthetic?
I mean, I would be shocked, but if that was the case, then don't do it and don't do them anymore. But I don't believe that's where the science is bringing us.
I don't think that there will ever be a test that you can take that will show that you have gender dysphoria biologically. I think the only way that you get to a diagnosis of gender dysphoria is through ruling out other possibilities. And the way that you do that is through talk therapy, psychoanalytical therapy, and the current treatment paths that are allowed for treating gender dysphoria do not allow for that. Affirmation is the standard of care that is out there.
It's a horrible standard. It's a fucking if you know anything about psychology, it's terrible.
So I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with Danimal in that the affirmation model is the primary method of, I guess, diagnosing and treating this thing, and it's so unusual in contrast to other. I don't want to say mental disorder per se, but other kinds of mental phenomena like this. We don't treat them in this sort of affirmative sort of way. We don't, like, if someone is suffering from a form of, say, schizophrenia or a personality disorder or or is experiencing hallucinations, we don't affirm these delusions. We don't affirm. We don't say that this is in fact the reality. We say no, this is not really what you're experiencing. We don't affirm someone's auditory or visual hallucinations. If somebody says, "I feel like my I don't know, my family's trying to kill me," we don't affirm their suspicions. We don't,
paranoid delusions.
Exactly. We don't affirm someone's paranoid delusions, or other kinds of disturbing or aberrant mental phenomena. So the affirmative care model for gender dysphoria just seems very unusual. We don't use it to treat any other form of mental disturbance like this.
See, I think that the affirmative care model has proven to be effective for some individuals. What my contention is that treating gender dysphoria needs to be individualized, and you just can't have a blanket standard of care for treating it, because it is a very, like Kav was saying, it comes from a very diverse set of different antecedents that make gender dysphoria present, and you need to go through each of those antecedents and kind of treat them, see what shakes loose.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you can't
don't,
just go
I don't
in
want
with an
to
affirmative
open
care.
a whole can of worms either. But even on the issue of physical transition, there are a lot of problematic practices there too.
Yeah, there's some predatory behavior on the, especially.
There are a lot of gender
Yes, of
clinics. The number of gender clinics has just skyrocketed in the last 20 years, I think.
See, the problem with affirmative care model being the standard of care is that there's been kind of a gold rush of clinicians coming in that are looking for a big payday.
It
Right.
sounds
Yeah,
so
and there have been,
awful.
and
subpar treatment.
here's the kicker. The whole thing about was it not affirmative consent. What am I thinking?
Affirmative care. Daniel,
Well,
you look. Your
I
voice
just wanna
sounds
say-
exactly like your
When
avatar.
you-
Is that avatar accurate?
does it?
I'm curious.
It is super accurate. It is super accurate.
He
And
he
naked.
sounds nothing
I am
like
Here's what I-
Mario. What are you talking
Here's what I'm
about?
But-
trying to get at. So you walk into a gender clinic, you sign a piece of paper saying, "I know the risks." From that point on, they can do anything to you. You cannot sue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
insane.
they couch it as your. I mean, we've listened to detransitioners confront their gender therapists, and their gender therapists.
Oh my
keep
God.
This was your choice. This was your
Right.
choice. You chose to do this.
What
Right.
a
Well,
fucking
they're just
bitch.
in,
They
like,
just
don't
unload
sue
it
me
on
mode
them
at
and
that
say,
point,
you
so-
chose this. It's like, you told me I had to do this or I would die.
right.
Yeah.
This
Well-
is how these conversations get framed.
Where are
I
these
think-
videos? Send the clips. We want to
Yeah,
watch
Jesus.
these.
Sure, I'll
Christ.
send you some videos.
Yeah. Cool. But what I wanted to say was I wish this was what transgender activists focused on, was these kind of predatory behaviors from these medical professionals. Because
lot of
there was
them
a
will
doctor
not.
in California that we were reading about that has like 14 or 16 malpractice suits against him this moment right now.
Are you saying that this is the excesses
he's
of
still doing-
capitalism and these anti-capitalists are
surgeries.
saying
Oh my
absolutely
God.
nothing about it?
Oh my
Strange, the animal. Very
I'm saying,
strange.
I know, very strange.
When you make surgery elective and then throw away all responsibility, that's kind of what happens, especially on largely a very young, very vulnerable, possibly mentally ill person, and
Yeah, the
saying this
most
is what you have
vulnerable
to do.
people in society.
Yeah,
most
these people are
vulnerable
fucking
people.
evil. They're totally evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we're seeing in these sort of trans circles is kind of a microcosm of larger problems within sort of a broader, not just trans, but other like LGBT spaces, I guess, or in the LGBT community, quote, with generous air quotes. And I kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit, especially, Danimal and I on the podcast several times have made our points of contention with the current state of the again, generous air quotes, the gay community.
I hate it.
Very clear. Yeah. Pretty much in short terms. And I think that what we're seeing in some of these trans circles is kind of indicative of larger issues in the gay and other LGBT in the LGBT community at large, especially with regards to how adolescents understand or find out about LGBT topics. So that the recent piece of Florida legislation, the supposedly don't say gay bill that's been making the headlines, or so I've heard because I don't read the news. Danimal, I think you read through it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and it's funny that Sitch thought it was two separate bills. The one that's protecting parental, I don't know how to phrase it, knowledge of what their child's doing at school, and then versus not teaching. It's actually, I think it's codified in the bill. That's kindergarten through third grade, where they're not allowed to do classroom instruction around sexual orientation or gender identity.
Yeah, and I think that was the main point of contention that a lot of people at least on the internet were taking with it, and that's why they sort of call it that you can't teach kids about gayness and so on and so on. That you don't say gay and so on. But really, I read that specific. I think Danimal, you posted it in our group chat.
Yeah, well, it falls in lines with the curriculum standards for Florida, which are the CPALM standards. You can just Google them and pull them up, and you can see all the teaching standards. And they're basically saying that sexual orientation and gender identity fall in line more with the later sex education standards than they do with anything that has to do with K through 3.
Right.
So it's just the bill is basically falling in accordance with the CPALM standards.
Yeah, and it didn't seem at all. It seemed, at least the excerpt you shared, seemed entirely inoffensive to me. I mean, this might just be my, or rather conservative viewpoint on it, but I think it's common sense. Don't expose very young children to, I guess, adults or matters relating to things to a point in their life that they have not attained yet, because we're talking about like kindergarten through third grade.
And
these kids
what they
haven't
would
gone
say,
Yeah, they don't have a 9-year-old doesn't have a concept of that quite yet.
exactly, because they hasn't gone through puberty yet. And
the
so
funny thing is what they'll say is, well, you can know your gender identity at 3. That's, I mean, that's their kind of conception of the whole thing, because people can exhibit gender dysphoria as early as, sometimes like 4 or 5. This is kind of what I don't like. I don't like the conflation of gender identity and gender dysphoria. I think they are two separate things.
Well, and a lot of what I've seen, quote unquote, clinicians point to as kind of early examples of like people presenting gender dysphoria when they're a kid, they kind of overlap with also what's termed proto-gay, which is children that present these behaviors that typically later end up being homosexual. Those behaviors typically overlap.
Right. That's the desistance rate right there.
It's a lot that I think there are several studies on the subject, right? Including the Stainsmith study that you mentioned a while ago, that a majority of the children in that study who desisted grew up to be gay men or lesbian women primarily. Is that
super fabulous gay men?
Oh, of course.
I think I found another reference to a brain scan study that suggested trans people have brains also very more similar to homosexuals than to the opposite sex. I'll have to dig that one up as well.
No shit. That's
hey, come on now, no.
No, I'm just saying because they are homosexuals. What are you talking about?
Some of them. People are mentioning AGP in the chat, and I want to do a little plug. I haven't read up on AGP a lot. I have listened to interviews.
I think it's overstated.
I think it's overstated, and I think I would encourage, because I hear this a lot from TERF types. They talk about AGP as kind of an insult. I would encourage you to look up genuine AGP interviews. These are very, very tortured men. Okay, they are supremely mentally ill. They really, really struggle. They're suicidal.
Well, that's the standard we should pick for all transgender people. The really mentally ill
the
people.
first person to become legally non-binary. Was that in the United States, Danimal?
Yeah,
that was in the United States.
Don't trigger Sitch.
Sitch
is against
legally
the
non-binary. He's this man, and he ended up doing that process, becoming legally male again. But he's on estrogen because he's got like severe AGP where he just wants to kill himself all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He doesn't say he's female. He says, I'm not female. I'm a man. He's even married, and he's like trying to just really
he uses the estrogen because it kills his sex drive.
Yeah.
How is he getting off on it if he wants to kill himself? I don't understand that.
Because mental
it ruins
illness,
his
man.
life.
It's effectively a paraphilia, at least. So if there's one
AGP is
research.
autogynephilia for the person in chat that asked autogynephilia.
Right.
And
Which-
a lot of the work on it was done by Dr. Ray Blanchard, who is either famous or infamous, depending on how you want to look at it, because he has done a good lion's share of research from the 70s onward into gender dysphoria, transsexuality, autogynephilia, and he proposed a very controversial typology of transsexuality, in his own words. So on one hand, you had the homosexual transsexuals who were attracted to men, and the autogynephiles, who were men who had a paraphilia for, that is, they would get erotically interested in the idea of themselves as a woman. And so this, obviously, like I said, he started doing this work back in the 1970s, and he ran into a great deal of controversy. Him, James Cantor, and J. Michael Bailey, among et al. And I think that in many ways, Blanchard's work is invaluable to this sort of research. But
Well,
what's
I think it's a good
tragic
jumping
is-
off point. I don't know how.
Yeah. I
Well,
think the
We've been-
reality is it's all very
There has to-
complicated. I'm guessing there are, as I said, multiple types of
By the way,
conditions.
Tenny, can I just say that you say transsexual like Dr. Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it makes me giggle.
I
Is it-
see you shiver with
is it-
anticipation.
We've been going for
Isn't it-
about an hour, so
Well, hold,
let's,
wait, whoa,
and we have a
whoa.
Yeah,
ton
yeah.
of super
Calm the fuck
chats,
down.
and I
There's an-
also
There's
have
an
a hard
important
out tonight,
distinction.
so.
There's an important distinction here. Okay. And that's with the guy who has AGP, who wants to kill himself. My understanding is that the reason he's, as you said, he's using it to kill his sex drive. And when people have these sort of sexual obsessions,
Well, hang on. Let me stop you there. The reason that he is only being prescribed estrogen is because of the affirmative care model. Because when he goes to mental health professionals, they want to treat him as though he's transgender.
no, I understand that, but you're saying he takes it not because he wants to be a woman, but because it kills his sex drive. Okay.
Well, it's because it's the only option he has
right. So
in terms of the way that the care
right.
models
So
work
my
right now.
understanding is that someone with AGP, it's like kind of having a porn addiction. It's that it's not that the feeling of having the porn addiction or the feeling of being attracted to, dressing in like women's or whatever the AGP thing is, that feeling is not what makes them suicidal. The problem is that the feeling is so strong that it dominates their lives and
Hmm.
ends up taking
Yes.
all their time, ruining their lives. And thus that is what in turn makes them suicidal. That's very, very different from gender dysphoria, where it's the feeling itself, not the action. It's the feeling itself that drives them to suicide.
Right.
And maybe that's
Right.
the clear, distinctive line between the two things.
yeah,
It is,
absolutely.
and it's, I think, possible for someone who is AGP who hasn't been through a differential diagnosis to kind of confuse those two things.
Oh, of course.
And this is probably happens a lot. And I guess I was saying what I said earlier because I do see a lot of TERF types say really negative things about AGPs. I think they deserve sympathy as well.
Sure. of course.
Probably transition is not the right mode for them. But they do need just severe help.
Yeah.
So,
And they are used as a prop by people who are anti-trans to kind of
Yes.
go after the trans crowd. By the way, I see
because
lots
as
of
men,
people,
sometimes men get a little
men are
a little
weirdos.
creepy.
I see just a lot of people asking what's AGP. I just want to say that's autogynephilia, and it's when you get sexual gratification off.
Oh, I
of
have that.
Imagining yourself as a woman.
Oh yeah, I totally.
Oh,
have
I
that.
told
You have that?
I thought all
Yes.
guys had that. What?
Adam.
You like to imagine
Oh.
yourself as a woman with a
Yeah.
vagina and breasts?
Adam,
of
I told the
course.
server I would pink
Gets
pill
me
you
rock
before I went.
hard. What are you talking
Oh.
about?
So
Oh, God,
everybody
I
gets
think
to
I
clip
won.
that.
I think I did it.
You guys don't have. I thought all guys had that. What?
Well,
Well,
You guys don't-
We're learning
Wait.
interesting things today. Shane.
Wait a second here. You guys don't imagine, like you guys don't put bras on and stuff and just
Well,
imagine.
see,
I
I don't
imagine
have to
women ever,
imagine.
Adam.
No,
I'm good.
I'm
You know that
talking
movie
to the
Sounds of the
guys,
Lambs,
Kaval.
Adam?
Okay, this is
Well-
this is one for the guys.
Adam, here's the thing: we're not attracted to women,
Mhm.
so
Oh, you guys aren't? Oh, yeah, you are. I forgot. You're the two homos.
That might
Yeah.
damper things. Yeah.
Adam is like, you guys don't all feel like Buffalo Bill? I'm so confused.
So do
I
you guys?
shocked me.
So do you guys get aroused just by thinking of yourself as yourself?
That's true. Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yes.
I just look at
You just
myself
look
in a
in a
mirror.
mirror.
Okay, I just
yeah.
can't even go to work some mornings. I'm just
So hard.
trapped.
Someone
Why
in the
do-
chat just typed out Adam is Ed Wood.
Well,
It's
if
true. He is.
people- I mean, why would you want? I mean, sure, you get turned on, but why do you need to transition? Just enjoy it.
Well, I think because it's
Oh my
deeper
God.
than just wearing. It's not
Yeah.
just transvestism.
Uh-huh.
'Cause that's
It's
the-
actually
that's
you
the
want
difference.
to transform. I mean, if you go to any corner of the internet, you will find transformation fetish art of
Oh.
men turning into women. Like it's just a thing.
In fact,
that-
let's search it
true.
right now, live on the air. Sit
No.
No,
there.
let's not
You're
do
gonna
it.
give
Look it
me,
up
like,
right now,
You're gonna give
Adam.
me some Vietnam style flashbacks to DeviantArt
In
2014.
fact, you could find many kinds of transformation art, which I will now describe in
I don't-
excruciating
I-
detail.
First of all, I should let everyone know I'm joking. It
Uh-huh.
seems extremely
Yeah, that's
boring
it.
imagining myself as a woman, so it's
Sure.
not something that I spend a lot of time.
Are you
doing.
saying women are boring?
Because
Yeah, of
just
course.
remember,
That's
ju-
exactly-
Just remember, Adam. Just remember, it puts the lotion on its skin.
Yep.
Remember
or
we
else it
talked
gets
about
the hose
biological sex differences? The main one is that
Yes.
women are boring.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
That
That
is
is true.
that's fair.
They're also
Remember,
not
guys, it's
smart.
a comedy show. Hey, yeah.
Fair.
Uh-oh, Sammy is taking notes for the fan art, Adam. You shouldn't
Oh,
have said
shit.
what you said.
Oh shit!
no.
Well, wait, she's already
right, it is.
transitioned me. Wait, the one that her picture. I mean, I got to admit, fantasizing myself as that does kind of turn me on.
Wait, you
Let me
Wait,
bring up
you
the
fantasizing about yourself
female
as a
Adam.
femboy?
No, she did a
Femboy
picture of me
Adam.
as like the.
Are you
the-
saying that you would motorboat yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. If this,
but
but we have a bunch of super chats to get to. So do you want to
Yes.
have any closing thoughts, or Sitch? You've been
No,
trying
I'll
to get
just,
in. I don't know. Do
sorry.
you have closing thoughts, Sitch?
No. I
No?
I said my piece.
Oh, I did want to recommend a book.
Mhm.
Just so I don't forget. Sitch, I know you can read. Adam, I'm not.
Mhm.
Adam listens to audiobooks because he can't read, obviously. So
Yes.
I want to recommend.
Do you want me to read Adam a story? Is that what you're saying?
No. I want to recommend the book Homosexuality and Civilization by
Mhm.
Lewis Crompton. It's probably the single best work of gay history that I've ever encountered. I first read it like years ago.
Yeah, it's
And
super
it-
hot.
It's
Tennyson,
tough because
Yeah, that sounds kind of gay. I'm just gonna say.
funny, but it's a survey of homosexuality that doesn't dive into like sort of a lot of the BS you see in like current LGBT studies.
What would that
And
It's written in the
stuff be?
70s, right?
It was written. I want to say the first edition was written. It began work in the 70s, I think, but it was published first in 2003 after like years of research. And actually, I highly recommend it because it covers not just it goes from like ancient Greece, ancient Israel, the Roman Empire, ancient China, Japan, all the way into the medieval period, the Renaissance, and the early modern period. And it's just brilliant because it covers a lot of areas, because we tend to think of gay history in the West as sort of a long history of constant persecution. And it was like that from the Middle Age, from the time that Christianity sort of became the de facto religion in the West, all the way up until the last 50 years, when the gay rights movement took off.
All right,
And
book recommendation. Got it.
yeah. Go look for it. It's great.
I just want to say,
Positive gay
Tenny
history.
loves the book so much, all his pages are stuck together on his copy.
Hot.
You.
No slurs. We can't say slurs. It's live.
We could slip one in, right? You guys can.
No
edit this out. We're not live.
slurs.
Oh,
No slurs.
dang.
You can keep your
Danimal,
slurs on your
Danimal,
channel.
closing thoughts. I'm gonna close out with my plug.
Oh, well, you know what? I'll suggest a book too. It's called Deviance War. It's about Frank Kameny. He's kind of a big figure in the gay rights movement, about his fight through the courts. He's the guy that talked to the APA along with Barbara Biddings about getting homosexuality taken out of the DSM. He won major court cases early on, getting enlisted men who were discharged for being homosexual back into the military service, and he fought pretty much his entire life to get sodomy laws overturned in DC before they were overturned anywhere else.
Wow.
He's a big figure in that. So that's a good book, Deviant's War.
Cool.
Indeed.
All right, I'm just gonna plug in my channel. I dropped the link, and I know you guys are gonna drop the link as well.
Drop
it's
the
just
link.
my
Links in the
username.
description.
Yeah, it's just my username. That's where you can find all my videos. Like I said, my next video is going to be an exploration of the different definitions of gender and how people use the term gender in the gender war currently ongoing. So I hope to get that out. Well, I haven't recorded it yet, but once I record it, it's usually pretty quick to come out.
Remember, you're going to
Very
change the name of your
fascinating.
stream to 3 Gays Touch a Pussy.
That's right.
That's true.
We should just rename our podcast.
Yeah, I
to,
kind of liked that we did a whole like name change gimmick, and I kind of liked the conversion therapy podcast, but I'm pretty sure we would get flagged every single time.
Yeah.
No
man.
Country for Straight Men was a great
No
one.
Country.
That was a
Straight
good
Men
title,
one.
honestly.
I feel like it's just too wordy, but you know.
Yeah.
Is
I like
all
that
you guys do all you guys cover is gay issues?
Gay, gender,
so far.
Yeah, LGBT issues mostly.
LGBT issues. We also did otherkin and zoophilia one time.
And pornography.
Oh
and
yeah.
porn.
Oh yeah.
Hot,
So like
hot
sexuality
pornography.
issues
Yep.
nested in there. The
Zoophilia,
otherkin
fun.
episode is great. I have a real affinity for that one.
Mm.
Maybe a fur affinity.
Mm.
I found the autogynephilia atom for you guys. I
Oh,
There we
I
go.
finally
Did you-
dug it out, so we're good to go.
hot.
All right, thanks
Thank
for coming
you.
on, guys. Thanks
Yeah,
for
well,
having
thank
a
you for having
stimulating, fascinating conversation about gender and sex. I
Mhm.
think the big takeaway that we can all get from this is that Adam is correct. Gender and sex should be completely
Oh my God.
separate.
Oh,
in
and by the
same
way, shout out to the one who couldn't be here, Gabbles, #1 Will and Grace fan.
Yes. Poor
Uh,
Gabbles.
inside joke.
yes.
Inside joke.
Inside joke. Yes.
Alrighty.
Our
Take
fake
care, you
gay.
guys.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Hopefully, you guys will be big in the future, as big as us. You know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
One day.
one day.
I'm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.